Is zero even be considered a number?
We can debate about that.
Huh?
We can debate about that. Sal, can you check if we're live?
I'm checking.
Chicken?
I am checking.
Might take a little bit.
Chicken.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay. Hello and welcome everyone to today's brand new episode of Corecast. I am Tim, your host.
And I'm Mikey.
This is Sile. Welcome everybody to a brand new exciting episode of Corecast. Before we get started, if you haven't already, do join our Discord channel. And if you're watching on YouTube, where we do this every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, do ask us questions during the episode. We'll get to it. So without further ado, let's get to it. So Tim and Mikey, we had a schedule constraint, so we wanted to make this episode short. So we thought it would be fun to do a numerology type episode, and of course related back to physics. So we can just start off by what's the most significant number in the universe? For people in the chat, we'd love to hear your answer as well as we're going through this, and each of us giving our own opinionated answer. So I guess, Mikey,
I
I'm
don't know
just gonna.
why we decided to make this. I don't know why we decided to make this a short episode. This could be like longer than normal episodes.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah. But Mikey, I'll start off with you. What do you what do you think is the most significant number in the
No, the
universe?
best number. The best.
The best
What's the best
number.
number?
Okay. The best number. I guess actually before you answer that, maybe Tim and Mikey, we should like kind of put some qualifiers on like I know there's not really a good answer for this. Like, what do you consider best or significant? Like maybe we can input, yeah, describe
I
that.
I mean, it's weird. Like humans, for like all through history, humans have been kind of obsessed with numerology, right? Like when Plato first observed like the planets, he could only observe five of them, so he thought five was like a magical number. Um, and maybe the number five is like the key to understanding everything in the universe. That turned out not to be true, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because people like simple explanations to complicated answers. um, I don't know.
yeah. Let me just add that I think there has to be some qualification of what we even consider a meaningful number in our list of candidates, right? Because if you talk to a mathematician, his or her answer might be very different. And also there could be
Very
a yeah, and also there could be candidates like pi 3.1415926 blah 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 blah, or some of these like what we call numbers, and people might consider significant. But in consideration of our universe, I think we need to limit ourselves to things that are physical, not just in the abstract realm, but something that is linked to observation, something that's linked to experiments, at least not just theoretically. There needs to be some like physics involved in order for us to consider
Yeah.
consider them to be of significance. So I would say with that in mind, we can exclude perhaps some of the more abstract construct to to ground ourselves to things that link to physical realities.
In other words, in nature, there's no such thing as a perfect circle. So 3.1415 is out of the running.
What about Euler's number, E?
Yeah, nothing is perfectly exponential, I guess, right? So I guess that would also be ruled out.
Yeah, and I would say that like numbers like that, like Euler's number E, it has more to do with the concept of a function, the exponential function itself, than the number itself. Right, like E is not very useful without you exponentiating it. So I would kind of separate those two concepts a little bit. You know.
Yeah. E is kind of like a point in a function.
Okay,
Okay.
so the constraints of this is that they have to relate back to physics in terms of being like physical, measurable, realizable, and so E and pi and other numbers like it, even some things like the golden ratio, aren't necessarily like realizable.
It has to be a number that you can measure in experiments. So that rules out any kind of real number because you're never going to measure something to be exactly pi. You're never going to measure something to be exactly E. So we're sticking to integers.
Or irrationals if you prefer. right? You can
Okay.
technically measure
Yeah.
irrationally. Is that true?
I
But
think that's
rational numbers suck, right? So okay, so if we're gonna talk about what's a good number, we can talk about what's a bad number, right? I don't know. I can't think
Okay.
of any rational number that I like.
But all integers are rational.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't think of any non-integer rational number that I like.
yeah.
All right.
I would say also like there's a difference between the number itself and how we represent it. You know,
Mm,
like for example, a rational number could be 2/4. That's the same thing as a half, right? And when we talk
uh-huh.
about the significance of something, we want like the essence of it. Like we're not really talking about the way we write it, like the digits of it, right? We're talking about the concept behind it. So I mean, I think rational
Yeah,
number
yeah.
is
So
yeah.
we're not
I,
talking about like so if we wanted to talk about like significant ratios, then maybe those kinds of fractional numbers would come into play.
okay. Actually, before we jump in, there's usually like a lot of lore around like the number 1/137. Maybe we can clear that up.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
But why? Why is this
It,
stupid?
it, it's like I remember so when I was in high school, they taught us that 22/7 was one way to represent the number pi, and I thought that a long time, and I'm still upset about that because. And so 1/137 is exactly the same thing. It's like close
Yeah,
to the
Hey,
right answer.
yeah. The thing is, 1/137 is an approximation to a concept of what we call the Feynman structure constant. And the thing is, it's not even a constant. It's just the strength of electromagnetism at a particular given a particular way of measuring it. So and because like that number itself, sure, you can see it. You can see it in experiment and whatnot. But 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 the concept underlying that number is the theory of electromagnetism. Like that number just pops out. So 1/137 or the constant that it's representing doesn't inherently have that deeper meaning of like, hey, that essentializes electromagnetism, right? So I would say 1/1, like it could be 1/138. You know, the word will be a bit different, sure, but like, is it that significant? Like, what about the strong force and other forces or gravity, right? Like, it's completely ignoring that. So that's a thumbs down for me. That's not really.
Yeah, 1/137 sucks. We don't like it. It's a terrible number. I like
so
eight.
I see. Wait, before that, I just want to touch upon one point, actually 2 points. Mikey, I also empathize. I thought for the longest time 22/7 was pi. I was like, why are people not saying that? But yeah, I feel really misled by that. Second thing, Tim, what you were saying is that so none of the constants like c, g, I mean, speed of light, gravitational constant, or like Planck mass or Planck energy, all that stuff, those would not be considered not like special numbers in this context because they're arbitrary in the sense that like depend on units and also they might even change possibly.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
yeah, nothing that depends on units can out of this conversation. Nothing that depends on units is like cool at all. So like maybe like pi, maybe e, because those are dimensionless, unitless numbers. So like maybe we consider them, but as we described before, if we're sticking to physically measurable quantities, then those are out.
I mean, one could argue that those quantities pi and e depend on infinitesimals in some sense, right?
Yeah. They require infinite precision in order to, you know,
Yeah, that's fair.
visualize.
All right, so Mikey, you were saying eight, right?
Yeah.
Interrupt. So
Yeah.
continue.
Don't you like eight?
Wait, what's this? I mean, the only thing I've heard about eight is if you like turn on its side, it becomes like infinity. But I think that's
Yeah.
just kind of a cop out,
So many fun
honestly.
things about it. There's so many fun things about it.
It
I
just
don't know.
happens to be a coincidence between like the two symbols being related to each other through like a
So
90-degree
Yeah.
rotation.
Yeah. It's
well,
so that's like an added bonus.
I don't think I'll go that far yet. I think you know if you want to describe numbers, we have to look at the numbers that are related to our physical world. So one of the number that comes up is four because we live in, like Einstein's theory said, in a space time, and that space time has 3 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension. And when you add them up, that is 4. So you can argue that 4 is a very, very concrete number, and that has
Yeah, we can
significance.
measure it. We can count it. We can measure it.
I'll just jump to my punchline. I think I'm gonna go with 0. 0 is the ultimate number.
Wait, okay.
Yeah.
I noticed something, Sahil, that we we're kind of like discussing our favorite numbers yesterday. Like none of us picked odd numbers. Why is that?
They're kind
We
of
don't like
odd.
odd numbers,
I
I
guess
guess.
if I were to go with odd numbers, I feel like I would gravitate toward prime numbers as a whole, but I'm still gonna go with 0. I think,
Uh,
yeah, for reasons.
explain, justify.
Oh, so okay, I'll start off with one thing. Every single equation you write is a fancy way of writing 0.
Oh my God, that's my favorite quote by Professor Zamolodchikov. He said,
Yeah.
"Every deep truth is just another way of expressing zero."
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Like the entire mathematical physics is based on
uh,
fancy ways of writing 0.
you're
So
kind of selling me on this point, which is unexpected. I'm not happy about this at all.
But I would counter that. I would say if you consider the number system as a whole, like 0 is kind of just a requirement to make the operations work. Like, so that you can add and subtract and multiply and stuff. Um,
okay.
so
That doesn't detract from it.
yeah, but but like, do you really believe nature operates on moving all the elements of the equation on one side and set it to equal to 0? But I don't truly believe that. I think like nature, I think operates on a deeper level, and it doesn't necessarily need this concept of 0, maybe, right? Like,
No, zero is necessary. Definitely, you need zero. Yeah, it's the annihilation. You have to be able to annihilate things. You know, create things if you annihilate things.
yeah, but I would say like,
I just don't see why it's like so. You have zero and you have one, right? And that gives you two. You have two things now, and two is a pretty cool number. I think two is a good number because you have like the absence of something and you have something. You have zero and you have one. So two, it's pretty sweet.
yeah,
Wait, oh, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
but my problem is that it is too basic, right? Like, because every concept ultimately you can argue that you can map it to zeros and ones. That's too reductionist. Like, without zeros and ones, you can argue you can never do anything. So it's not specific
Yeah,
enough.
is that a criticism or a praise? I'm not exactly sure.
No, I would say that the concept of zeros and ones are too general. Like, you can just map any concept to zeros and ones, but ultimately you can write it down using zeros and ones. But it's not
Sounds pretty
specific.
awesome to me.
But it's not specific enough to our universe for that to be considered meaningful. It's like saying that, hey, look, well, language is the most important thing because we can't
Wait, no, wait,
describe.
hold on, wait. If you're going to require specificity to our universe, then you're going to win, and that's not fair.
No, but look, like, what I'm saying is, if you consider zeros and ones the most significant thing, then it's just not an interesting discussion, right? Like,
Okay, for the audience, Tim likes the number four, and if we're restricting this discussion to the significance to our known universe, then he's going to win, and that's not fair. So I protest
Wait,
immediately.
I have a counter statement, but I guess Mikey, you were stating the number 8, but it seemed to rally you on my side for some reason.
Yeah, but well, I don't know. I'm kind of into Tim rallied me to the number two, so I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think I like two the most now, but.
All right, tell us why 2.
Well, because like you like so in every in group theory, right? You need to have like the annihilation operation, and you have to have the unity operation. You have to have the thing where when you multiply it, it destroys it. That's zero. Zero destroys whatever it multiplies by, and you have
Mhm.
to have the unity, which is like the do nothing. You multiply by one, it does nothing.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of other requirements, but in group theory, those are like the main requirements. You have to have at least those two things in terms of like minimal ingredients to have some kind of structure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I see.
So two is good. Two's a pretty cool number. You have two things, and yeah. And I know we were talking before, like you had mentioned this result about like being able to generate number systems from zero, just from zero.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. in group theory, I guess like it's kind of like you need 0 and 1 to generate everything, I guess. But I guess yeah. Are you talking about number theory
I'm
or
just talking about if you want to construct the set of like integers or whole numbers, then integers, then rationals, and then I haven't really studied this too well, but eventually you can go to the real numbers. But you start off with just the empty set, which is the representation of zero, and then you define an operation called the successor, and based on that, you can just construct all the numbers. And so to even
hmm.
describe the number of dimensions or to even describe anything related to our universe, you need to have the number zero. Like you can't start
Uh,
with four and then work backwards to get zero. That's my
Yeah.
understanding.
So I think personally, I have a
I guess yeah.
yeah. Personally, I have a deep problem with that because imagine
Oh,
this. Imagine I'm the god of the universe. Do you really think that because in physics we know that there's a symmetry between front and back, left and right, up and down, right? That's the three
yeah.
spatial dimensions, and there's time, right, for in time and backward in time. Like if imagine if I'm the ruler of the universe, am I really going to be like imagine my task is to create a universe? Am I really going to be saying, oh, front and back, that's number one. I'm gonna like do some set abstract set operation and then like use it to create left and right and then use it to create up and down. No, that's not how it happens. We believe up, down, front, back, left, right, they are created all equal. Like if I was the creator of the universe, I'm gonna create everything wholesale. So in my mind, this crazy zero ones and you add them up to two, three, four, five. That's a figment of the human imagination in my mind. Like I would say if
So,
But
yeah.
actually, Tim, I would challenge you and say, aren't dimensions kind of a figment of the human mind in some sense? Because like we don't really know how many dimensions there are. I mean, there's holographic theory and stuff that like reduces it and says non-locality, things on the surface. And so couldn't you say like we live in one less dimension in some sense, or maybe it's unclear. Even string theory states more than four dimensions. So I don't know, like just yeah. I'm
Yeah,
challenging your notion.
well, I think when Tim is saying that these numbers we're talking about have to have physical significance, I think that's what he means is like, yeah, like we are talking about numbers, I guess, in if Tim's version of the argument, we are talking about numbers that are restricted to our like human psychological biases and
Human psychological
experimental
biases
limitations.
human psychological biases are based on the language itself. Like we require language in order to like specify the universe. Otherwise, nothing to work with. So you need zero to specify.
I do believe that if we met up with aliens, we would agree on the fact, like, on the number of spatial dimensions, like any kind of concepts existing as such. I mean, obviously, this is like pure speculation on my part, but right, I think we would.
yeah, but let me get back to Sahil's point. Yeah, and I think it is true that it's plausible that maybe our universe fundamentally might have more dimensions. Maybe it's 11 dimensions, like what string theory was describing. Maybe it's six dimension. I don't know, right? Um, of course, you can go the more speculative route, and maybe like some other numbers in string theories are more important if you truly believe in it. Maybe 11 is a very important number. Maybe you can believe that. But I think at some point there's a fine balance, right, between numbers that are so basic that any mathematical operation has to require it. That's like zeros or ones. Towards something numbers that are so specific that's only specific to one special theory. But somewhere in between, you have to link that number to be like, well, it has something to do with our world, right? Where do you draw that balance?
Okay, so Tim is saying that 0 and 2 are not allowed.
Wait, why?
So we can only consider 4 and up.
No, I don't think I'm saying that. Well, I would say that yeah, maybe zeros and ones are not exactly allowed because you can always say even if there's some concept that are not exactly zeros and ones, you can map it to zeros and ones, right? Like yes and no, you can map it to zeros and ones.
Hmm.
But I think number two you can debate, maybe have a better debate about it because it's not obvious. Number two is involved,
Yeah.
right? Um, but yeah, zeros
Okay,
and
so okay, so
ones.
okay, so Sahil chose the number 0 based on the idea that it's kind of like the generator. It's like it can generate all
Mm,
things. Um, I think from what you're talking about with the number 4, um, maybe Sahil could revise his answer. Like I think in the same spirit as Sahil answer, in the context of what we're talking about, would be the number two, right? Because from two, you can generate like so. Two is special because once you have two things, you can define opposites. You can define north and south, and so you have you have the idea of anti, right? Like you have establishment, you have anti-establishment, you have electron, you have anti-electron, and that's very crucial, crucially connected to this idea of like the number two, right? And once you have the idea of like anti, like opposite, from that you can what is four? Four is just two different opposites that intermingle with each other, right? And we're talking about how SE2 generates all the rotations, but so like I guess in the context of what we're talking about, the generator number is like two. I think Sahil chose the number zero based on more like mathematical.
Yeah, which I mean, as we discussed in a previous episode, the mathematical universe hypothesis, things made of math, it ultimately zero is the only thing that's just counting nothingness, like or sets of nothingness.
I do feel like Tim is putting too many restrictions on this and kind of setting it up so that
I will answer.
he has to win.
I would argue the number three, because there are only three things that human beings can keep track of: zero, one, and infinity. It's like either there's nothing, there's something, or there's too many. So
Yeah.
I think I'll stick with four, and because we're talking about physics, this is a very physicist answer. Like the number needs to be falsifiable. If one day we found out that our physics is not really based on this concept of 3 + 1 dimension, then that number is out. I'm happy with that.
Wait, hold on. We have to end. I feel like we didn't even get into like 1%. I didn't even get to explain why I like the number 8, and I don't think I'm going to get to it.
Tell us why you like the number 8.
It's just a cool. No, I mean, I think we need to continue this to the next week. This is unfinished business. We're like actually just starting to decide what we mean by good and bad numbers. But 8 is the best because it's twice 4. It's exactly 2 times as good. No, it's more than twice as good as 4.
This is reminding me of the really corny joke of like, why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I would add one thing why 8 is interesting. If you follow this theoretical physics exercise and you try to keep adding symmetries to our theory, I think Mikey, you and I discussed this. And for example, if you like supersymmetry, you can keep adding supersymmetry. You see that a lot of these symmetries end with 8. 8 is the endpoint. Like for example, 8 is the maximum amount of supersymmetry you can add in. Amongst other things, it seems like, for example, if you make the real numbers complex, make complex number quaternions, blah blah blah, you can keep going, you end up with 8. Although those are two not exactly related things, but there seems to be some hint that 8 is.
They're related.
Huh?
Aren't they related? Quaternions and
no, maximum supersymmetry and gravity? No, I don't think so.
The quaternions? There's gotta be. How can there be 2 8s coming out of nowhere for like points?
No. You're talking about octonions. Sorry, when you go to 8, you go to octonions. Yeah. I think
that 8 is not related. Has no connection to the octonionic number structure.
It's not clear. I've read I've read some papers about it. People are trying to maybe make some link, but there's no. It's never concrete.
Oh my god, it's got to be related. How can see 8 just comes up. 8 is one of those. I like 8 because 8 is one of those numbers where you don't think that much about it. You know, like 4 gets a lot of attention and 2 gets a lot of attention and 8 gets no attention, but it just like pops up, like randomly, magically in places where it shouldn't seem to, and so I have this very strong affection towards the number 8.
So I would say, like, if you compare these numbers to like the stock market of nature, right? Like zeros and ones are like your safest bets. It's just like this is your staple, like consumer whatever stock. It's like the basic stuff. Number 4, I think
it's like your bread and butter. It's your bread and butter. It's like if you're comparing to food, this is like your bread.
yeah. Like I think the number 4 is like also a very safe bet, but it's like it's big. It's like the cutting edge, right? And then like something like number 8 is this is like really speculative. Like you could burn you could burn in hell if you decide to chase it, or it could be the real truth, you know?
And I have burned in hell treasures.
All right. So I realize we're almost at time, so I want to give you guys a chance to the audience any words of wisdom that number 8 and number 4 have taught you respectively.
I think this is unfinished business, and so I don't
Yeah.
want to give a conclusion. I don't
Yeah.
feel like uh, the number 8 was appropriately represented in this conversation. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Eight is, yeah, I don't know. I see what Tim's saying in terms of like conservative choices. Like 8 is a little bit weird, but I mean, Ollie, no one like nothing we're saying right now makes sense, right? We didn't explain anything. We got to continue this.
Anything you want to add, Tim?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's true that it is indeed unfinished business. Like 4, beyond being the dimension that we live in, actually has a lot more interesting things. There are arguments to be made why maybe we live in a four-dimensional world. It is because of physics. Like there's actually a lot of physics that goes into that. Four dimension turns out to be one of the interesting dimension that when we can see certain behaviors emerges. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. And there's also a lot of research in more cutting edge speculative things. So 4 isn't just like a super safe bet. There still is like more interesting things arising from it, I would say. So we can talk about it maybe in a later episode.
I don't know. It's pretty conservative. We live in four space-time dimensions. You're trying to make it sound like it's like it's not a dangerous choice. You're being
No,
conservative now.
no, but we people have tried very hard to try to explain it because that is a concrete observation. It's probably one of the most solid observations of our universe that we live. We have 4 microscopic dimensions. That's undeniable, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, we also have an audience question. Actually, 2 audience questions. One is, how about I, which squared -1?
Well, okay, so that's actually intimately related to this. So the reason, the reason why 2 is an interesting number is because if you have the number I, you have the complex numbers are a two-dimensional space. And with complex numbers, you have the idea of conjugation, which is what I was alluding to with the idea of anti or opposite.
Mm.
Mhm.
So yes, the number I, a vote for the number I would be a vote for the number 2.
I would agree that with that. Yes. Yeah.
And then one of our audience asked, what about the golden ratio? But we said it's not measurable, it's not realizable, just more of a mathematical thing.
Yeah, I would say that's equivalent to more like a pi or an E type of
Yeah.
selection. We can have a separate episode on like what kinds of abstract conceptual numbers are the best and worst.
Yeah. I mean, it's more irrational than pi and e, but that's a separate discussion.
Oh,
Yeah. And then I'll just end by saying that 0 still takes the cake because you can't even describe any of the stuff without 0. So
that might actually, like, if we had a separate competition about the best and the worst like abstract conceptual numbers, like I like E pi and golden ratio and things like that, like
Hmm.
maybe that would be a good candidate. Yeah, if that was the competition, I would probably agree with you.
Wait, 0, you mean? Best
Yeah,
abstract?
yeah. If we're talking about abstract conceptual, because you can't really measure the number 0 anyway. So by Tim's definition, you've been disqualified. Sorry.
That's fair. I operate more from a language point of view. But anyway,
There should be two different like like different weight classes in fighting, or different like I don't know. There should be two different competitions.
I see. You've turned on me, Mikey. Originally you were sold on 0. Now you've turned
I'm a big flip flopper. You know that.
All right. So on that note, to be continued discussion. And so on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.
All right. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye.